Imagine a wedding. The guests are dancing. The feast is served. The bride, a young woman named Sarah, is beautiful and wealthy. But as the sun sets, the guests begin to whisper. They look at the groom with pity. They know he isn't going to survive the night. This isn't a ghost story. This is the Book of Tobit, one of the most unique texts in the ancient world. The text tells us that Sarah had been married 7 times before. But on every single wedding night, before the marriage could be consummated, her husband died. They weren't killed by poison. They were strangled by a jealous, invisible force. Sarah was cursed. She was being haunted by a demon who was in love with her. The entity haunting Sarah wasn't just a random spirit. The text names him Asmodeus. In demonology, Asmodeus is the king of lust. He is powerful, possessive, and violent. He didn't want to hurt Sarah. He wanted to keep her. He claimed her as his property. For 7 weddings, Asmodeus waited in the shadows of the bridal chamber. As soon as the groom entered, the demon struck. 7 men dead, 7 funerals. Sarah was branded a man-killer. Her own maids mocked her, saying, "You are the one who strangles your husbands." She was innocent, but she was trapped in a supernatural cage that no human could break. The story cuts to a different city where an old man named Tobit is suffering too. He was a righteous man who buried the dead when no one else would. But for his kindness, he was blinded by bird droppings falling into his eyes. 2 people miles apart, both destroyed by forces they couldn't control. Sarah went to her upper room. She considered suicide. She wanted to hang herself to end the shame. But instead she fell to her knees and prayed for death. At the exact same moment, the blind man Tobit also prayed for death. The text says, "At that very moment, the prayers of both of them were heard in the glorious presence of God." God didn't send death. He sent a fixer. He summoned the Archangel Raphael. His name means God heals. But Raphael didn't come with wings and thunder. He came incognito. He disguised himself as a regular human traveler named Azarias. He was sent on a mission to do 3 things: to heal Tobit's blindness, to bind the demon Asmodeus, and to marry the cursed girl Sarah to Tobit's son Tobias. It is the ultimate setup. A young man is about to walk into a trap that has killed 7 men before him. But this time he has an archangel watching his back. Raphael, disguised as Azarias, and young Tobias set out on their journey. They camped by the Tigris River. Tobias went down to the water to wash his feet. Suddenly the water exploded. A massive fish, some translations suggest a large catfish or a crocodile-like creature, leaped out of the water. It didn't just splash. The text says it tried to swallow the young man's foot. Tobias panicked. He screamed. But the angel didn't help him fight. He gave a command: catch the fish and hold it fast. Tobias wrestled the monster onto the dry land. It was a test of courage. But the fish wasn't for dinner. It was a weapon arsenal. Raphael stood over the dead fish and gave strange, specific instructions. He told Tobias to cut it open and remove 3 specific organs: the heart, the liver, and the gall. "Keep them safe," the angel said, "for they are useful for medicine." This is where the Book of Tobit feels different from the rest of the Bible. It reads like an alchemical text. Raphael explains that the smoke from the heart and liver can drive away a demon, and the gall can cure blindness. It wasn't just a miracle, it was a formula. Tobias wrapped the bloody organs in a cloth and carried them. He didn't know it yet, but he was carrying the ammunition for a war against a prince of hell. They arrived in Media, near the home of Sarah. Raphael turned to the boy and dropped the bomb. "Tonight we must stay at the home of Raguel. He has a daughter named Sarah, and I will speak to her father that she may be given to you as a wife." Tobias froze. He knew the stories. He said to the angel, "Brother Azarias, I have heard that she has been given to 7 husbands, and they all died in the bridal chamber." Tobias wasn't irrational. He was terrified. He said, "I am the only son of my father, and I'm afraid that if I go into her, I will die as those before me did, for a demon is in love with her." Raphael reassured him. He told him the secret of the fish organs. When you come into the bridal chamber, take the ashes of incense and lay upon them some of the heart and liver of the fish and make a smoke." Tobias agreed, trusting his guide. They entered the house. Raguel, the father, welcomed them, but when he realized Tobias wanted to marry Sarah, his face went pale. He agreed to the marriage because by law, Tobias was the next of kin. But the text reveals a heartbreaking detail. While the wedding feast was happening, Raguel quietly slipped outside into the backyard. He grabbed a shovel. He began to dig a grave. He was so certain that Tobias would be dead by morning that he wanted to have the hole ready so they could bury him before the neighbors woke up. Tobias and Sarah entered the bedroom. The air was heavy. Sarah must have been terrified. She had watched 7 men die in this exact room, on this exact bed. She likely expected Tobias to drop dead at any second. But Tobias didn't hesitate. He remembered the angel's command. He didn't try to fight the demon with a sword. He reached into his bag and pulled out the raw, preserved organs of the giant fish, the heart and the liver. He walked to the incense burner that was smoldering in the room. He placed the organs directly onto the hot coals. Immediately, a thick smoke filled the room. The text describes it as a specific odor. It wasn't just a bad smell. It was a spiritual fumigation. The chemistry of the fish organs combined with the fire created a barrier that the entity could not tolerate. It was chemical warfare against a spirit. The demon Asmodeus, who had been lurking in the shadows waiting to strangle Tobias, was suddenly hit by the smoke. The text says he smelled the odor, and it repulsed him so violently that he could not stay in the room for even 1 second. The king of lust turned into a coward. Asmodeus panicked. He fled the room, smashed through the spiritual barriers, and ran. He didn't just go outside. The text says he fled into the utmost parts of Egypt. He ran hundreds of miles away, trying to escape the power of the angel's instructions. But he wasn't running alone. While Tobias stayed with Sarah, the angel Raphael, no longer in disguise in the spiritual realm, hunted the demon down. Raphael caught Asmodeus in Upper Egypt. Just like in the Book of Enoch, where Raphael bound the watcher Azazel, here Raphael binds Asmodeus. The text says the angel bound him hand and foot. The curse was broken. The predator was chained. Back in the bedroom, the smoke cleared. Tobias looked at Sarah. He was still alive. He didn't die. For the first time in her life, the wedding night wasn't a funeral. They knelt down together and prayed, thanking God for the deliverance. But outside, the father was still digging the hole, waiting for a corpse. Raguel was practical. Before he started crying, he sent a servant girl into the bedroom to check. He told her, "See if he is alive, and if not, we will bury him at once so no one will know." The maid opened the door slowly, expecting the smell of death. Instead, she saw Tobias and Sarah fast asleep, safe and peaceful. She ran back to the father and shouted, "He is alive!" Raguel didn't just celebrate, he panicked. He grabbed his servants and told them to fill in the grave immediately before the sun fully rose. He had to hide the evidence of his doubt. The curse of Asmodeus was finally broken. The wedding was celebrated, but the mission wasn't over. Tobias and Sarah traveled back to his home, where his father, Tobit, was still blind and waiting for death. Tobias ran to his father. He had the final piece of the fish in his pocket, the gall. He smeared the bitter substance into his father's eyes. The text gives a graphic description, and when his eyes began to smart, he rubbed them, and the white films scaled away from the corners of his eyes. The blindness peeled off like dead skin. For the first time in years, the old man looked up and saw his son. He wept and blessed God. The family was whole again. Now came the time to pay the guide. Tobias and Tobit offered Azarias half of all the wealth they had brought back. They thought he was just a mercenary or a prophet. But the stranger refused the money. He took them aside and said, "Bless God, praise him and magnify him. I am not a man." He dropped the disguise. The atmosphere shifted from gratitude to terror. He announced, "I am Raphael, one of the 7 holy angels who present the prayers of the saints and enter into the presence of the glory of the Holy One." The 2 men fell on their faces, terrified. But Raphael said, "Do not be afraid, you shall have peace." Then right before their eyes, he ascended into the sky and vanished. The Book of Tobit survived in the Catholic and Orthodox Bibles, but it was removed from the Protestant Bible, perhaps because it was too magical. It teaches that fish organs can drive away spirits. It teaches that angels walk among us in disguise. But Raphael isn't the only one who can control demons. There is another ancient text, one even darker than Tobit. It claims that King Solomon didn't just build the temple with human hands. It claims he used a magic ring to enslave an army of demons to do the heavy lifting. Next time on the Enoch Archives, we open the Testament of Solomon and the Ring of Power. Like the video if you want to see the demons of Solomon, and subscribe. The archives are open.